So we're going to go into live remote music collaboration. And we are lucky to have two folks who are very well established in this field. And hey, Brian, good to see you, buddy. When I showed up in San Francisco, soon after I got there in the early to mid 90s, there was this group called Res Rocket. And they were working on remote collaboration music tools. And they got silly money from Paul Allen and folks like that. And it was a bunch of folks, one of whom was Will Henshall, who's a award-winning producer and talented serial entrepreneur. And I think you're here, Will, so why don't you say something and it'll move you up right into the top, I think.
Hey, nice to see you, Brian. Yeah.
Always a pleasure. Always
Absolutely.
A pleasure. And we're also, and I will say, he's gone on to do a bunch of other things, including Focus at Will, which Shoshana uses all the time to improve her concentration.
Music to help you work.
Can you tell them about it for like 4 seconds, 10 seconds?
Sure. Focus at Will is a science-backed music service that creates music streams based on your personality types. As I said, it's all based on research. And it's when you are stressed and under pressure and you are newly working remotely. It is really effective, which is why I am so busy at the moment, because business is booming. Ironically. Thank God for the COVID virus is all I can say.
No, it's amazing because, 95% of the companies I know are having really hard times and 5% of them are 10xing.
I feel kind of guilty about it, but I've had hard times in the past when we weren't so useful to people. So
cool. And we were also lucky enough to have David Wilson of JamKazam, which has been around for a while. And I know, has needed to improve. And luckily now it's getting the resources to actually do it. It's, the issue about latency is a really hard thing. How do you overcome the laws of physics? But now that, people are getting direct connection. It's funny because all the people I know, like, we're wired into the Ethernet now. I haven't been wired into an Ethernet for years. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the project and what's going on and how you're raising money and the future?
Sure. We visited here with you a few years ago out in San Francisco, right? And we've been at this since 2014, following in the footsteps of Will and trying to avoid, arrows in the back, much like Will before us. And it's certainly a hard problem to solve in terms of, having really high quality audio, extraordinarily low latency that enables, playing in sync, and also really mass market usability. The triad of trying to do those three things at the same time is extraordinarily difficult. So we've been chipping away at it. As you mentioned, I think we've been undercapitalized all the way down the road. We effectively ran out of money, a while back, and have been continuing to just do this, as our project company. But perhaps like Will, COVID has kind of blown things up, and it's brought a lot more interest to what we're doing. So we had about 400,000 sessions played last month on the platform. And we put up a GoFundMe and had the community give us, a pretty decent chunk of money to go actually do something we've had on the drawing board for quite a while, which is work at the actual internet latency part of the latency problem. We'd previously delivered a product called the Jam Blaster. Most of the people playing on our service play with a Windows or a Mac computer and an audio interface, right? And to your point, plugged in via Ethernet to the to the internet. And that works pretty well. But the Jam Blaster was intended to provide mass market usability and also take audio processing latency, way down. What we're working on next, and we're about to actually field this technology, is tech to cut the internet latency between musicians, actually shortcut the internet itself. So we're excited about that, and we have a massive amount of data, you know, in terms of, you know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of interconnections between different musicians across the platform. So we have incredible insight into what's possible. And that gives us a lot of confidence, you know, that we still have that this vision and this mission are for real. And, you know, it's very doable.
Cool. So Will, what did you learn that might be able to help David?
Well, there are many different types of collaboration. The obvious one is I got a guitar, you got a guitar, and David's going to sing. That's the obvious one. How do we do that, right? And that is what JamKazam solves remarkably well. Back in the day in Rocket Network, for people listening to this who aren't aware, we were the very first track-based collaboration system. And we realized early on in the Rocket Network journey that most of the musical collaboration that was happening is actually one person at a time. So yes, you do have to have occasions when you are all sitting around playing together, but a lot of the actual meat and potatoes of the recording studio business at a professional level is actually laying down tracks. So what we did was, you could think of it as working on a collaborative canvas. And in fact, the sort of the quick journey through the 10 years that I ran Rocket was, we started off by building a standalone collaborative sequencer, which we had to build ourselves. No one had it. And then about the time we met you, Brian, we were integrated into Logic Audio, Cubase, and Pro Tools. And we had a couple of other DAWs that were about to integrate. And we wrote an API that they connected to. So our goal at the time was to try and create a server system that was like, you could think of it as a universally accepted, universally accessible interface that you could access an online collaboration system, a session with from anywhere. So that if you had a Logic session open and I was running Cubase, I should be able to open that core data on my machine, add a track, take a track away, and work on it. So again, just to wind forward to the end of the story, this became a part of Pro Tools in Pro Tools 5.0. And the challenge with Pro Tools, of course, as anybody who works in Pro Audio will tell you, they are all about Pro Tools. You can't, there's no interoperability at all. If you have a Logic session, hard luck. You've got to deal with dropping it into audio and then importing it and all the rest of it. So the Pro Tools version of Rocket Network only worked with Pro Tools. And in the end, we sold the company to DigiDesign, Avid, and then this morphed into DigiDelivery, which was an incredibly robust way of sharing Pro Tools files around. And even though, yes, I'm a musician and a composer and I come from a music background, we ended up building this device which was used mostly in the audio post world. So DigiDelivery, which only recently actually was taken out of commission, was the standard way of securely shipping audio post in the movie business around. The interesting thing is that track-based collaboration has come back into the Avid world. If you've seen the Avid cloud collaboration that came in with Pro Tools 12, that core system is in fact Rocket Network. So it sort of skipped a couple of years and has come back. I'm kind of disappointed in the cloud collaboration, the Avid cloud collaboration system. It's unwieldy and difficult to use, but it's still there. So I guess just to cycle back to what you were asking me, Brian, yes. What did I learn? It's difficult to monetize musicians playing live together over the net. That's what we learned.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And so, David, what? I mean, you guys are raising funds now. Can you talk about like what you're raising, how you can join in, and what that will get you? It seems to me like you're not raising that much. Can it actually get you to where you need to be?
You know, there's multiple paths, you know, to the finish line, and Will and I were chatting earlier and kind of chuckling about the fact that a lot of being a startup is about just surviving long enough to catch the right, you know, crest of the wave, right? It's more stamina and survival than maybe even intelligence or anything else sometimes. Um, so, you know, I think that we do have people interested in giving us money, you know, now, which is nice, because that means we don't have to keep spending our own, and we actually could have enough money to do some more interesting things that solve bigger parts of the problem. So, can we get enough? TBD, you know, I don't know. We shall see. I think, you know, one thing I would mention though is even where it is right now, I just pasted a couple of things into the chat. We have an online music festival that's going to be pretty darn cool tomorrow night. It starts at 5 p.m. Central. We've got 8 bands playing 30-minute sessions together on JamKazam. We can stream live natively out of JamKazam into YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. We're going to host this one on Facebook. And I think it'll show, it's just people using, you know, we didn't help any of these people. They just got up on the system. They're using industry standard audio interfaces, you know, just standard peer-to-peer, you know, streaming and all that kind of stuff that exists in the platform today. So I think that'll show a lot of kind of what's possible already.
All right, juggling a couple things over here. So does anyone have any questions for these guys? All right.
I want to talk about 5G. Brian, I want to talk about 5G, and it's nothing to do with any of the nonsense you see online about 5G. Yeah, 5G. All 5G means is it's faster wireless connections. But what's fascinating and really exciting, particularly for David, in my opinion, in his business, is that 5G connectivity globally, which is coming, whether people think it's Bill Gates pizzas or whoever knows what's going on. It is not dangerous. It is not causing problems. It is not causing COVID. I wonder whether anybody who's on the internet these days ever went to a science class in their life. What is up with these people?
So here's the thing about 5G. The only thing that is proven to prevent 5G waves from actually injuring your brain is wearing a tinfoil hat.
Exactly.
So anyone who tells you about how 5G is going to hurt your brain and they're not wearing a tinfoil hat, you know they're not serious.
Yes, sir. So let's just jump on to the outcome of this. There are extraordinary new, particularly in robotics and in other, you know, autonomous vehicles, in telemedicine, in telerobotics in the medicine space. There's a lot of very, very interesting and sort of mission critical devices that are going to be using this always-on, extremely fast network. Now, why this is exciting for David and his world is that when you get latency and jitter down to single digits, like everywhere, anywhere, that means that the infrastructure that he will be able to build with his tools on top of that will make this absolutely flawlessly able to work. And I predict that's coming way faster than we think. Within 2 or 3 years. I'm actually partly funded by, in my current business, by Singularity University. And we've been talking there a lot about when is this happening. And it's already here, actually, in test environments. So it's exciting. Your mic's off, Brian. Your mic is, there you go. Let's try again. You're still muted, brother.
Tech support has arrived.
Absolutely. I mean, David,
But
what's your thoughts? What's your
let's
thoughts?
chat with each other.
That's all right. What's your thoughts
I agree.
on the reduced latency?
Yeah, I think 5G is going to be great. You know, the other thing that we're doing is just kind of building an overlay on the internet itself to shortcut internet route paths, right? Because that's Yeah, I could be in Austin playing with my brother in Dallas, and my packets could be going to Atlanta and then on to Dallas for all I know. And that's what
Right.
kills you. Like you,
Right.
you just never know what you're going to get. And so some people will have absolutely stunning sessions, and you can see when you get those what's possible. Everybody should check out the prog rock band that's like number 4 on our lineup tomorrow night. Those guys are awesome. They're from the New Jersey area, and when you see what they can play together, it's kind of mind blowing. But you can't deliver that consistently enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have bands out there that are just dead in the water because the path route that they get and the ultimate latency they get, even if they're close enough that it should be okay. They're not trying to play
Right.
from, New York to, Japan or something.
Can you
should work.
without giving anything away, can you explain a little bit about what you say about going around the internet? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, you just
doing?
Well, you basically just create a mesh network and, intercept and reroute, kind of control the routing because we have the applications they're running on. We can actually set up stuff up in the cloud and catch the packets and do route path optimization. We can control the route that to some degree at least, that the traffic is going and moving along between the musicians in the session. And therefore we can, we can optimize it. And we did tests on this like years ago, like four or 5 years ago, and found that we could have a tremendous impact on internet latency. It's just, we didn't have the capital to do it. And the network was still, we would have needed even more capital than we do now to do it. So fortunately, things have changed over a few years. And as they do, we're able to go, crack that nut without making the same kind of a capital expenditure we would have had to before.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that those of us that have been around the net a long time understand that TCP/IP is not the only protocol that goes over the cable that's connecting you to the net. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. We actually, in Rocket Network, we experimented with UDP and a number of other different ways, including kind of completely custom ways of getting large data sets over the net, unthrottling. We experimented with using some of the transmission protocols where you don't throttle FTP, for instance. So it's unthrottled FTP, which is extraordinary. Yeah. So, yeah, it's exciting times. Brian seems to have run off somewhere. That's interesting.
Like Brian's replacement.
Absolutely. I want to ask you a question, actually, David. You and I have known of each other for years, although only really today got to talk. What was your first personal, like, I'm going to build a remote collaboration system? What was the aha moment that had you do that?
It was a really typical entrepreneurial aha moment. I had just finished, so I have 2 co-founders, Peter Walker and Seth Call, who are the technical, the actual engineers who built most of this. I'm a business guy. And we had built a cloud gaming technology that was also an ultra low latency media streaming play. We had built that. It was a precursor to what you see from Google Stadia today, and some other things that were out at that time. This was many years ago. We sold that to GameStop, and we're kind of wrapping up there. And at the time, I play keys badly, and I was picking up the guitar and starting to learn how to play that equally badly. And I lived in Austin. My brother lived in Dallas, and I thought, while I'm kind of trying to get going here, it'd be really nice to be able to just get on and play with Doug. And I was like, well, that's never going to happen. And I was like, well, if I can play a video game that's running in a data center in Dallas that feels like it's on my, on my mobile phone here in Austin, why can't we do this with music? And so that kind of just set the whole thing off, right? And it's not an original thought, like, at all. Like, people have had this thought. Many people have had the thought. The hard thing is the execution, right? And you were so early, having a go at it, and we were really too early having a go at it. And that's often the case with entrepreneurs. Again, it's so much is about timing, right? And I think, sometimes it hurts to be adventurous, right?
Yeah, we were talking earlier on about how the pioneers are the guys with the arrows in their backs, and if you look at successful technology, there's a great book, Crossing the Chasm, that a lot of people really like, that talks about if you're too early and where you sit in the adoption curve. And you mentioned something to me earlier on, which has really resonated with me in my own experience in this. I'm not involved now in remote collaboration at all, but I was for 10 years. And you said that musicians in particular are conservative, surprisingly conservative.
Yeah.
I can see you smiling. They are. We found in Rocket Network, musicians were actually not our customers. It ended up being not even the recording studios. Our customers ended up being people who had large data sets they needed to securely move around, which was typically the big media businesses.